Hey guys, Adam with Splendid Sports. Welcome back to Turn Back the Clock. This is episode number 15, joined as always by Dylan, DoubleD Vintage Baseball Cards. How you doing, Dylan?
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Adam. This is always a fun time hanging out with you.
We both kind of got the post-national beard coming in. You know, we're just getting back to normal life after our first national. So we're going to talk on the second half of the show here. We're going to talk about not like a national recap or any of that stuff. I think that's been beaten to death probably across YouTube. But we want to talk about a couple specific things. One that we differ a little bit in opinion on that we noticed at the national, it both being our first one. So we're going to talk about that in the latter half. The first half here, we're going to show some pickups and talk about a couple things related to those pickups. But first, I know you wanted to mention what's going on in Maui, and you live in Hawaii, so I know you wanted to say some words on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge what's going on right now. And I know there's a lot of people in a world of hurt right now. And talking about cards, it's just, it's a weird thing. So I just wanted to make sure that I say thank you to everyone who reached out to me. I'm not in harm's way. We're not even close to any of that. But I feel for everyone that's going through and what happened, and it's devastating. So that's kind of where I stand. I just wanted to send some love out to my fellow friends on the island, and yeah, that's it. And now we can talk cards, and I'll feel better about it.
And I just want to say it's an area that I actually got married in Maui and hung out a lot in that area. So I just it's unbelievable, and same thoughts. So just a terrible thing. So yeah, we'll move on here, and we're gonna go into some pickups. Do you want to go first with pickups, or
why don't you go first? I want to see. Okay. I want to see what you got, because I've already seen mine.
I've picked up a lot of great cards in the last, I don't know, period of time, 3 to 6 months. And I've done a terrible job of actually showing those cards. There's so many cards I've picked up that I haven't showed or on YouTube or anything like that, or even mentioned. So I'm going to try to be doing a little better of that. This is a little start. I only got 4 to show here, but this first one is a recent pickup. This is a Bill Walton rookie card. Let me go solo on this. There we go. This is a Bill Walton rookie card, 1974 Topps. Always loved the design on this. And I know you're not a huge basketball guy, but I wanted to show this one because my wife and I, we actually watched, there was a mini documentary. It's like a 4-parter on ESPN about Bill Walton. And I don't know how much you know about him. Again, I know you're not a huge basketball fan.
I know Bill Walton and his son also.
Yes.
I love that.
I wanted to mention this to you and anyone watching. Again, even if you're not a basketball fan, I thought it was great. My wife and I watched it. It's called The Luckiest Guy in the World. It's on ESPN. So it's a stream. If you have the streaming app, just look that up. And it's a 4-part series on Bill Walton. And it's, it's about basketball, but really the personal story. I've always been a fan of Bill Walton. He's a crazy announcer. He talks a lot and he says crazy things. But, he was a member of the 1986 Celtics, which I consider the greatest basketball team of all time. And I didn't know that much about his personal life. But in this, one of the things that was amazing to me was he had a devastating stutter growing up for like the first, I don't know, half of his life. And he never really gave interviews. He barely talked. And then later in life, he becomes this huge announcer who never stops talking. So it was just, it's a great story, just kind of what he's overcome. And I love stories of guys who like the ultimate what if stories. Like, I collect Mickey Mantle. He's the ultimate what if guy. Bill Walton in basketball is an ultimate what if. I mean, he had a Hall of Fame career, but when you watch how great he was in some of these highlights, he was a 7-footer that played like a point guard, and he just suffered through injury. So I won't go through the whole thing, but I want to show that and recommend it. I
love that. I love that story. I love the adversity story with the stutter. I grew up with a good friend of mine who had a really bad stutter, still has it to this day. So it's like one of those things that Yeah, to overcome it like that, it's really cool. It makes me want to go buy a Bill Walton card right now. So, dude, I don't care if it's baseball, basketball, football, stories like that. When I read books and stuff, I read books about tennis players, all kinds of different athletes, just because there's really deep stories in there. So I'm glad you shared that card. That's awesome,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna watch the documentary for sure.
I think you'll like it. It's really good. All right, so moving on. The next three cards here, they kind of have a common theme, which we're going to get into in the last part of this episode. We always talk about eye appeal and grading and stuff like that. So these next three pickups, these are examples of cards that the grade to me did not matter. I graded two of these myself, and examples of cards that I didn't care what the grade came back as. It honestly didn't matter to me. This first one here is a let's go solo again. 2004 Pedro Martinez Essential Credentials Future. Okay, just a really cool looking card. If you know anything about these inserts, parallels from the late 90s, early 2000s, Essential Credentials is like one of the most sought after ones. And this one, just a great design. And again, I sent it in for grading. I knew it wasn't going to get a 10. And again, I didn't even care because these cards, they're just so hard to find that any grade is cool. Like it's a great collectible regardless of what the grade is. This one here is numbered to 60, let's see, 61. But even though it's numbered to 61, which isn't like a 1 of 5 or whatever, these things never pop up, man. It's very, very hard to find these essential credentials. So again, a card that the grade doesn't matter. I just like having them slabbed up, and whatever it came back as, I was fine with. So,
dude, the rarity is in the number. It's numbered. Exactly. It's like, how much more rare do you need it? You need a 10 or a 7, like that. That's just awesome. I love that.
Because a lot of cards I collect don't have inherent rarity in them.
Yeah.
So, but these are examples of cards that are just rare on their own, and grade, whatever, doesn't matter to me. Doesn't make a difference. And then another one, shout out to our good buddy Shane from Shoebox Legends. This is a card that he notified that me of on eBay. This is a Tom Brady 2015 top 60th anniversary blue foil stamp buyback. So basically, if I zoom in here, it's a it's the base card from that year. Oh no, the card itself, I'm sorry, is 2012. So it's a 2012 card, but in 2015, Topps did the buyback, the insertion of old buyback cards, and then they stamped one. I mean, this card, I think it's like a pop 1. I mean, it's for what I looked at, this was like the only one graded by PSA. That's how hard this card is to find. So thank you, Shane.
I wonder why PSA doesn't put 2012, because it's a 2012 Topps card and then 2015 buyback.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That frustrates me right there, because these are museum pieces, right? When they're displayed, you want the correct information on the top. So there's a negative against the PSA right there, because that should say 2012 in my opinion.
Yeah, 2012 card that was reissued in 2015. Yes. You're right. Yep.
It was printed in 2012, correct? That's the original?
Just like 2012 Topps card. Yep.
Yeah, just like buybacks in baseball. I think when they label those, they label them proper. So that's really weird. Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome card.
But anyway, I sent it for grading, and again, whether it came back a 6 or an 8 or a 9, whatever, whatever. It's just like, it's such a rare card. So very happy to have that one in the collection now. And then lastly, this is a big one. You don't know I have this card. I've never shared it. I got it a while back, but I'm a player collector, but I do want to have at least one card of all-time legends like Satchel Paige.
So, you did it!
This is the 49 Bowman Satchel Paige in a PSA 2. I wanted to show this one on this episode because this is the perfect example of what I love in a nice vintage card right here. Rounded corners, centered, good picture. This is perfect. I'll take these all day long. PSA 2, but grade does not matter at all. If this was a PSA 1 or 4, it doesn't matter to me. This card is exactly how I like them. They got the wear and tear on them, but it's still a perfect eye appeal card for me.
Dude, that is a stunning example. You know what? It's so fascinating to me when you see rounded corners like that. It looks like it was cut perfectly rounded.
Yeah.
How did they wear so perfectly? Like, I know
know.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
campy rookies like that. That is a stunning two. That's
Yep.
exactly why I appeal is king, and who cares about the grade itself? Pay up, pay less, whatever it is. That card looks better than so many cards that are graded higher than that. Dude,
Yep.
I can't believe you got that card and you didn't tell me. Would you be willing to share what you paid for that, or would you not?
No, I'm going to hold off on that. I'm not going to mention the price on that, but I think I got a good deal on it, based on what the a two can go for. So, honestly,
awesome.
I'd have to look to remember what I paid for it. I kind of got a ballpark.
I'll ask you after.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
I would love to have that card in a two. It's it might be doable.
Yeah. Yeah, and just happy with that one. So a little foreshadowing. I've picked up some big cards that I have not shown, and I have some big cards that I've had for years that I've never shown. So that's going to be kind of a little theme on my channel here in our episodes. I'm going to try to show some of those cards that I haven't yet. You
mean the channel that you said you're going to do a video every day, and then you've only done one in the last month?
Hey, I've been sick. I got sick twice, man. Twice in a month. That's the first time in my life.
I love watching your videos, so I'm like, dude, where the heck are this guy's videos at?
Yeah, I'm going to try to do a little better here. It's tough.
Right on. So did you pick that up after the National, or way before randomly you?
Oh, no, I think I picked this card up about a year, like maybe a year or so ago.
Gosh,
yeah.
Look at you.
I've been holding.
Such a holdout. That's what we do though sometimes.
I like waiting sometimes. I like to wait. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's tough to tell someone you just spent a bunch of money on a card, and then it feels weird, right? And you're like, man, should I tell anybody about it? I'm just going to keep it to myself, share it later. I think we've all kind of done that.
Yep.
Just, it is what it is. So, dude, awesome.
I've got some bigger ones that I have not shown.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, I took up too much time on that one. I know we're trying to keep this like to 25 minutes. So sorry, go your turn.
All right. So first I want to do a quick shout out, because these have to do with my pickups as well. And I read the Mangini letter today or yesterday, the number 4, and it was about, wasn't him, he had a guest writer, and it was about the Manko sets and the Japanese cards in particular from the set. And I love these Manko cards. So I had this one prior, and I had this one prior before the National, and I picked this one up from Robert at the National. Dealer there, really nice guy. Absolutely love the artwork, love the colors on this. So shout out to Mangini. Love the letter, love that article. I forgot who it was that wrote that, but it was outstanding.
JP Wisco.
JP Wisco. Oh,
yep.
Sick. Okay, so dude, I don't even know if I follow him. I need to follow him and check his stuff out, because that was really awesome. Well done. I encourage everyone to read that last letter. I picked up this other Sadahara O card, which I had shared on my channel. Just nice to share it again. The king of home runs, and he's on this Plain Days 61 Kings card. Forgot what year his rookie is, but this is getting closer. And I absolutely love this card. For me, I've had it on my wall displayed in a single frame above my desk since I got it. One of my favorite pickups from the National. Here's a card that I have not shared yet. And this card is huge for me. It's a giant pickup from the National, but it was a pickup prior to the National. You texted me, but I didn't see your text. And I think you even texted me before Don. But Don texted me saying this card was up on Twitter from Ryan Nolan. And I had seen this card on his channel when he went to Europe. He found it in an album. And I asked him then, it was like 3 months ago or more, I asked him if he was going to sell it. He said, no, it's for his PC. But he put it up for sale. Somebody else, I got in touch with him, got his phone number, we were texting back and forth. Long story short, I was able to get it from him. And this is the only one ever graded by SGC. And this is a Duke Hanamoku. And this is a 1922 Felix Potten card. I read all about this, but to be honest with you, right in this moment, I completely forgot about everything. But I know the set was filled with a bunch of other players, but he's one of the highly sought after ones. There's probably been about 7 graded, I think, from PSA. and he upgraded, so he has another one. My personal opinion, I think mine looks even better than his, but his is a 4 something in a PSA. So I'm really stoked to get this. Has wax stains on the back, or like the glue stains from being in an album. Dude, it's a blank back. I'll never look at this back again. Duke Hanamoku, the king of swimming. He won, I think, 3 gold medals, 2 silver medals. Absolutely fantastic story. There's a documentary about him. You must watch this documentary. And he also is basically the inventor of surfing to the world. No one would have surfing around the world if it wasn't for Duke. So he's the king of my sport, and I collect his cards. And this is the 3rd card of his that I have. I have this one as well that I got around 5 years ago over here from someone who has met Duke. Really special. So to add this, the rarest card in my collection, rarest vintage card in my collection. Really proud, really stoked.
And that's the oldest one you have now of him, right?
Oldest one, yeah. There's older ones, and there's other ones that I'm looking for. And when I was at the National, I asked every single vintage dealer if they had any Duke Hanamoku cards. Not a single one except 2 of these, which I saw on the tables. 2 of them. Nothing near as good looking as this. But no one had the cards I was looking for, and no one had any more Dukes. Half the people didn't even know who he was. So awesome. Really stoked with that pickup. Now was done at the show. And what's really cool is it's on video on Ryan Nolan's channel. He videoed us the transaction. So extra special moment.
And I gotta watch that. I haven't seen that yet.
It's really cool. And all my friends were there. You know, you weren't there, but a lot of my friends were there. And the guy who wanted to get this from Ryan Nolan, he said he couldn't sell it to me just yet, what is supposedly the greatest Negro Leagues collector of, even though he's Hawaiian, but the greatest Negro Leagues collector in the world. He was trying to buy this card, trying to trade for it. And I just kind of like really kind of put the pressure on him. Like I texted Orlando and he gave me his phone number. So then I was text battling and just telling what it means to me. I'm bringing it home to Hawaii, and it just means a lot to me. So my most epic pickup at the National was this one.
Congrats. So, I'm so glad you have that.
Me too. That's what I got.
All right. So as I mentioned earlier, this was our first National. You and I we had a great time. But I want a couple of things that really both struck us. We talked about the people. This is going to be about the cards for the most part. So I heard you say this. I forget what other show or interview you said it on, or maybe it was your own channel. But you were really struck by how few centered vintage cards. There was a lot of vintage cards there. A lot. I mean, you'd see like the same Mickey Mantle card like 20 straight in a row at some of these showcases, which was incredible. But you and I like a certain eye appeal. We like centered vintage, right? And a lot of people do. I noticed the same thing, that like very few of them had the eye appeal that you and I like. So that you want to talk a little bit about that a little more on that?
Yeah. I mean, that was my biggest kind of concern going into the National, was in the back of my mind thinking, am I going to turn my back on my collection and be like, man, I really don't have that special of a collection, because everyone kept saying you're going to see 100 1956 Mickey Mantle cards, and all 100 at one table. And so I was like nervous going into it, going, am I going to feel kind of weird about kind of like, man, all this money I put into these cards over my lifetime, is it going to make me feel weird knowing that there's just millions of them and they're just everywhere? And I noticed within the first 30 minutes that the rarity in these vintage cards isn't the grade is rare, but that isn't the card itself. What's rare about the actual vintage card itself is when you get a centered copy. And when I talk about centered cards, eye appeal of the image itself goes hand in hand. There is no way I'm buying a centered card that has terrible image, unless it's just for like a display or something cheap, but not a real card, not like a big boy card or anything. The image is the most important, but centering to me has to be there as well. You can't have one or the other. I want both, and some I definitely would. There's definitely cards where I will budge slightly on the centering just because the card is rare in and of itself, and it is hard to find in all aspects and how long you want to wait. But with that said, there was tables that had 50 Mickey Mantles 1964s all lined up, and trust me, I went through all 60 of them. If they were graded and they were on the table lined up, I had them pull all of them out, because if you couldn't see, all you see is the top one. I wanted to make sure I saw all of them, because these dealers still not onto the whole centering thing. Dude, it was very rare that these guys were like really onto the centering eye appeal thing. It was still about the grade, which made me really happy. And I'm telling you, I was struggling to find centered vintage cards, and it made me so happy inside knowing that the cards that I've been collecting over the last year and a half have a rarity to them. It's not an everyday find that you find, a centered Sandy Koufax 1960, and especially in a low grade. Yes, you can find a 9, but even the 9s in most of these vintage cards have a diamond cut to them.
Right.
It blew my mind. So I was looking for, I didn't really tell anyone, but I was looking for a Clemente rookie and a Sandy Koufax rookie the whole time, as well as the DiMaggio and the Ted Williams while I was there. But I wanted a centered copy. That's the most important thing. Give me the centered, nice eye appeal. I didn't see a single centered Clemente rookie card except in a 9. And even I saw a bunch of 8s and a few other 9s that were not perfectly centered. They had diamond cuts to them. Only perfectly centered one I saw was a 9. What, $200,000 probably for that card? I don't even know. I didn't see, I probably looked at 120 of Clemente rookies, and in any grade from 6 and below, not a single one was centered. And Sandy Koufax, same exact thing. I was really looking at every single Sandy Koufax card I came across, rookie card. Didn't find a single one. I mean, I was with Adam Hall as well. So he knew I was a centering guy, and he was like, he would point out, like, I would think one was really well centered, and he'd be like, it has a slight diamond cut, Dylan. And I was like, I was so bummed, because I was like, you're right, can't buy it, put it back.
Yeah, like for me, going awesome. Into the National, I already did not care about grades with vintage cards. Like they were meaningless to me. I think we might title this episode "Vintage Grades Don't Matter" or something like that, because. But after the National, after seeing so many vintage cards and looking through all of them, I felt even more so that way, if it was possible, that the grade doesn't matter. I don't honestly, I have a decent amount of vintage cards that most of them I bought like pre-2021, in the past that, are pretty high grade and have sharp corners and stuff like that. I may never buy a sharp cornered vintage card again. It's like, honestly, I'm not just saying this because they're less expensive and I like saving money. I almost prefer vintage cards to be like that Satchel Paige card. I really do. I think I like rounded corners because it tells the story of vintage cards. Anyway,
Jake, it's funny you brought that up, because Jake, Legends Never Die, was on the show you were on, John Mangini's show. On
with John.
Yeah, on with John. And he stated the fact that he's anyone who doesn't know, Jake only collects ungraded stuff, but he buys graded cards, then cracks them up.
Yep.
He's not a centering crazy person like me or anything, but he likes wear on vintage cards. And I think you made a great point there, because when I look at a card, I'm not anti-sharp corners. Like this 3.5 has insanely sharp corners, no creases or anything. But that Satchel Paige and these older cards, they look absolutely stunning like that. The corners, like once you get past that, and anyone listening, I was a corners freak. That's what I was born and raised on for 40 years. Literally 40 years. I was a corners guy. That's all that mattered. Because that's what we grew up with. Don't touch the corners. you know, like on 87 tops, you know, don't touch the corners. You're like, dude, when I was 12, it was embedded in me. By the time I was 12, like it was all about the corners. It's all that mattered. I love this whole new concept. So sorry to take some of your time.
No, so yeah, that was my, like, as far as from a card perspective, that was my biggest like affirmation or takeaway, was that I've never looked at that many vintage cards in a period of time in my life. So that was the most cards I've ever looked at, just like scanning so many, looking through them, and I had that same takeaway that I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe it's 10% of vintage cards are centered. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely, it's pretty low. It's pretty low.
So Adam, I've got a fun project that I'm working on right now. I'm building a spreadsheet and I'm marking down, and I'm going to be doing this in future videos as soon as I get a little more data. I hunt so many cards, and so random, more than like different than most people collect. I'm super random, anything centered and good eye appeal. So I'm marking down how hard I think this individual card is to find centered. Some cards are relatively easy, like the 60 Maze. It's not a hard card to find centered. So I'm going to put a percentage on this of like 70%, you know, whatever it is, like not 70% of them are centered, but I'm going to do some kind of scale that tells me how hard a card is to find centered. And I'm coming up with a system, and I'm starting a spreadsheet of it. It's going to be really fun because each card is so different. Like for some reason, I'm learning over the last year and a half that Roberto Clemente cards are insanely off-centered. A huge portion of his cards, I don't know if all of his cards were cut on the corner of most of these sets, but his cards are one of the hardest guys ever. Willie Mays, one of the easiest guys ever to find centered.
I love it. I wondered that for so long, and there's nothing out there like that. So yeah, if anything you could put together like that would be really awesome to see. I'd love to know that type of information, because there's no way to know that now without someone actually putting in the time to do that.
Yeah, and there's people out there that understand, they get it, because they'll be, of course, we all know the Ozzie Smith, we all know this and this, but there's all the other cards too. And I know them, and I look at them, and I hunt for random stuff. So I think it's going to be really fun and a great experience, because I really think that we're looking at some of these cards, you're talking like 2%, you know, like 2 out of 100, if that. Some are 1 out of 100. Some are even harder. Like I was looking for the 57 Hank Aaron, didn't see a single one in the entire show in any grade that was perfectly centered. The longer I looked at them, there was something wrong. So I
had this idea too, you know, because I'm always coming up with wacky ideas in my head, right? Like after looking at all this, I had this idea that I was thinking, now I don't know, I'll probably, you know, cause some people to ruffle some feathers with this, right? Because anytime you mention the PSA set registry or eye appeal ratings and so forth, some people get a little upset. But what if PSA were to come up with an eye appeal grade, right? Because I always, one of the things about the PSA registry, especially with vintage cards, that's kind of crazy to me, is like the highest rank ones, it's all based on that technical grade, right? But if you look at some of these like sets that people have put together that are like #1 ranked, and you actually go through the pictures of the set, they got 8s and 9s that are off-centered, terrible, like not terrible, but like for the grade, terrible eye appeal. And then like you look at some of these other ones that are further down the rankings on this PSA set registry, and their 4s and 5s look better, but they're way ranked less because they only rank it on the number. What if PSA came out with like an eye appeal boost, right? So they could assign like an eye appeal grade 2 to these cards, where your 4 might get a bonus jump in the PSA registry if it has that eye appeal rating. You know, I know that's probably a lot to do for them.
I think what you're talking about is exactly what PWCC does, and then the other guy who does those stickers.
Yeah, but this would be by PSA for their registry, which is their biggest bread and butter, you know?
Look, there's just no way they're going to do that, because it cuts into their whole system, right? It cuts into their ideal point scale, the 1 through 10. If they do that, you start questioning their whole scale.
Yeah,
they can't, but I love it. I mean, I love it. I'm just being the other side going.
It would make it more fun though for some of these, like now the registry, you can only be like highly ranked with some of these vintage sets. if you're a billionaire, you know. And
I know,
it's
insane, right? It's you
so
just
for
pay to
people
get
with
on.
normal money or normal incomes, you know, if you want to try to like compete or whatever, it's impossible. There's like no way. So, but if you were to hunt eye appeal cards and then you could get bonuses for that, hey, it would make it more fun, guys. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Anyway, last point here. Last point before we go. We're going to keep this one shorter. One other thing I think we might differ a little bit on, and I've heard other like YouTube collectors. There's a pretty common sentiment that like the corporate at the national, the corporate presence is not their favorite. Like if they'd have it their way, it would be all card booths, you know, and not as much or any of the corporate stuff. I actually, one of my takeaways from the national was I really enjoyed going to the corporate booths. I certainly looked at a lot of cards, okay, but I really liked going to see the Beckett booth and the CGC booth, PSA, SGC. I kind of got a new respect for those companies because one of the things that struck me was the people that work at those companies that were at the show working, they were working their butts off. They were really working hard. And the interactions I had with them, great customer service. So it kind of puts faces behind these companies that we like to take shots at, you know. And I used to do trade shows in my previous job. I used to actually do trade shows for a couple companies I worked for, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and you know, there's a way to do it the right way, to be engaging and to work really hard, and then there's other people that do trade shows that kind of just sit back and they're hungover and don't do anything. But all the companies I went to, their setups, I was really impressed. So I have, I really enjoyed going to that end of the show as far as like the corporate booths and so forth. I know maybe you don't feel so much that way where, you know, you didn't, I think you said you didn't really go to any of the corporate stuff, right?
Yeah, I think the corporate stuff's really cool. I don't want to take away from that. I think it's needed. I think it's important. I'm fine with it, but it's not for me. It's just not something that I cared for. It wasn't that I just didn't have the time. Maybe if I went to a card show every 3 months, then I would love to go mash it up with guys at the corporate places and check out their booths and stuff. But I had so little time that the 10 hours it was open, I wanted to just be staring down at the glass looking for a centered vintage card. It was like I just couldn't do it. It was the same thing of running out of time talking to friends. It was very tough. But yeah, well said.
Well, all right. We're gonna keep doing these turn back the clock. So we're gonna cut this one here, so that we have more to talk about on the next one. So yeah, guys, this was episode 15 of Turn Back the Clock. Always appreciate you taking. It's 33 minutes in here. If you're watching, you took 33 minutes out of your night or day, out of your life, busy life, to watch. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one, hopefully.
Later, guys.
Later.